Greetings and konnichiwa, and welcome to the Onyx Tavern. Today we are doing a new episode of Sentai Origins, focusing on Bioman. And today with me, sharing in this experience, is my good buddy Raptor. Raptor, how you doing?
Yeah, it's good. I'm good. I'm glad we're finally back to Sentai Origins. I know it's been a while. We've been vlogging for most of it, but
yeah, it's been about 4 weeks since we did Sentai Origins, so it's good to get back in the game and watch a little bit of a classic Japanese television.
Get back to the roots.
The roots. All right. And actually, I like that you point that out because when we talk about roots in this episode, there are some significant things I do want to go ahead and bring up.
Yeah, for sure.
But again, we went ahead and watched the first episode of Bioman, and just for a little background right there, the first episode of Bioman aired February 4th, 1984. And nothing too special about this as far as the history of it or the origin.
One interesting thing is that the title does not have the word Sentai in it. It is simply called Chodenshi Bioman.
Well, he would catch that since he knows more Japanese than I do.
Well, don't just look at the title here. We're on Ranger Wiki. You don't see the word Sentai, do you?
No, I don't. But I do see a Korean translation, Space Commando Bioman. I kind of like that title.
Yeah, keeping the same title. That's nice. Yeah. There was no space involved.
Yeah. Well, this episode starts, like a lot of these early Sentais, and this one actually starts with an invasion. We are first actually introduced to our villains, and there are a lot of them in this. We have about 4 main human villains, and then at least 5 costume
monster villains.
That were introduced in the first episode. And the premise behind this is the leader is Dr. Man.
Yes, Dr. Man. And his henchmen are constantly saying, "For the man!"
Yes, that is their
English.
Yeah, that is their catchphrase. And we're introduced to him as henchmen, which I love the names on these henchmen. One of them, his name is Mason.
Yeah, and by the way, he's a white guy.
I don't even know if he is white or not. We probably should have looked that up beforehand. But he could be just the way
he looks like a white guy
with that makeup. That being said, the other character, Monster,
he looks like a black guy, and again, it could be...
He looks like Cyborg.
Yeah, he does, yeah. So...
And then Farah, I believe.
Farah, and she's Japanese, along with Dr. Man.
And there's nothing really remarkable about Farah, but Dr. Man, he looks like a blonde emo, if anything.
Yeah. When we saw him come in, I recycled Linkara's Legolas joke.
I will say, in the first, 60 seconds of this episode, we got introduced to our villains, and they are visually interesting.
They all look really cool.
Yeah, definitely look good.
I was hooked just by watching these guys. And what's interesting is a lot of these early Sentai episodes begin with the villains launching an assault and then meeting the villain, and then we get to meet the villains.
Yeah.
But this, we get to learn a little bit about the villains, learn a tiny bit about each of his generals.
Yeah, and all we really learn about Dr. Man is he views himself as the most brilliant scientist in the world. And the city that he's attacking, which I forget, it's Techno City something 21, supposedly is like one of the great technological centers of the world because that's where all the scientists go.
Yeah.
And which is in Japan, of course. And then he begins attacking that. Now, I just want to point out the attack. Like I've said a million times with these previous videos, they are very brutal. But this is the first time that they used, squibs and blood.
Yeah, we were complaining that the Sentai it was really after Battle Fever J, that they were lightening up the violence.
Because they were turning all the henchmen into robots.
Yeah, but this one, they go back. It's worse than what Go Ranger was throwing at us.
Yeah.
As you were saying, they were using squibs. The monsters had machine guns.
Yeah, because they're doing, Mason introduces them, and then the robotic henchmen, they open fire on a woman in a lab coat, and just blood coming out. I'm like, what the heck is this?
Yeah, and we want to talk about, we mentioned that they turned the henchmen into robots, so it would be less morally reprehensible to bust them up.
Yeah.
But these guys, when the robots are being fought by the Bioman, they are pretty brutally taken apart.
Yeah, and actually I do like as well because they always have. I think in a lot of these early seasons they are having to remind you that they are robots. So there's actually a part where their head phases and you see circuitry and it phases back. I mean, eventually they stopped doing this in Sentai and Power Rangers and so forth, but at this point I think they were really trying to pound that in. It's like, no, it's no longer guys, it's definitely robots.
Mm-hmm.
Now, of course, through this whole invasion process, there is a robot, which I believe comes out of Mount Fuji, which is the Bio Robo. And the Bio Robo basically starts searching for the 5 Biomen. And in something that's very reminiscent of a King Kong film, grabs each of them and picks them up and brings them to a clearing, basically.
Yeah, and what's interesting to note here is that while in the other Sentai episodes we get to learn a tiny bit about our Rangers before they're recruited.
Mm-hmm.
In this one, the only Ranger that we saw before he was recruited was Red. Because he was skydiving and he gets knocked out of the air.
Yeah, he's part of the actual invasion when we see him. He skydives, he gets knocked down, and then he's being attacked by all the scientists, but he's able to survive, and the Bio Robo picks him up. And he picks up the other Rangers. Now, here's the thing about it. None of them are given their names in this episode. We have no idea who they are, but we are given character traits through the way that, obviously they're acting, the way they're dressing, like the Pink Ranger.
Very minor character
Well, the whole thing about the Pink Ranger in this episode, which, okay, we're going to talk about, this is the first Sentai to have 2 females on the team. And when we introduce the Pink Ranger, she's frightened, she's timid, she's all those stereotypical things, and she faints when the robot picks her up and stuff. Then we see the Yellow Ranger, who, given the fact that she has this camera and everything, kind of reminds me it's like a hybrid of Lois Lane and Jimmy Olsen in a way.
Yeah, in that she's probably not a reporter, but she's an intrepid photographer.
Mm-hmm.
Probably did some kind of action photography in the past.
And she's unfazed by the whole thing.
And when the robot tries to pick her up, she's like, oh, these are going to be some awesome shots here. So she takes pictures.
Now, what's actually interesting about this that I like and I don't like is, one, it shows the different ends of the female spectrum, basically. You have the timid, stereotypical female character, and then you have the strong, the tomboyish character. So, and for the 1980s, I guess that's not too bad. It's not that big a thing. If it was today, then I would have more of an issue with it.
Well, what's interesting is that basically set the precedent that Super Sentai, and by extension Power Rangers, would follow for years to come.
Pretty much, yeah. The very feminine Pink Ranger and the less feminine Yellow Ranger.
The girly girl and the tomboy.
Which, again, is why Trini was originally going to be played by Audrey Dubois, who was more tomboyish in her appearance.
Yeah, kind of a punk.
Exactly. And then they went the very, very feminine Thuy Trang. But we're getting a little off topic there. But, yeah, I like what they did with the females as far as establishing them that way. The only things we learn about Blue and Green is, I think it's Green who's the race car driver or stunt driver, and then Blue likes the jet ski. That's pretty much it, and Red likes the skydive.
Yeah, it's interestingly enough, we learn more about the girls' personalities than we do the guys.
And what's good about that is, again, it's done without dialogue, because they have, I think, between them, other than their action phrases, maybe 5 lines of dialogue shared between all 5 of them.
Yeah.
So I've complained a number of times of how they start out too fast. Believe it or not, I thought the pacing for this episode was really good. It wasn't until the end of the episode when I realized they didn't name the Rangers.
Exactly.
So, again, pacing issues are definitely getting better, at least here anyway.
And what's interesting is this is also the first time in Sentai. Because at the end of the episode, they fight the monster, they summon Bio Robo, defeat the giant monster, all good and whatnot. But at the end of the episode, Yellow states that she does not want to be a Bioman.
And we'll talk about that as we get there, but that's a good character point that she makes that leads into the second episode, which we did not see the second episode because all the plot's pretty much established in the first episode, but I imagine the second episode's got more character bits in it that's fleshing out, because this was fast-paced action here. Even to the point where when we get our exposition, it's still quick, because when the Bio-Robo sets them all down, a smaller robot comes out, Peebo.
Yes, Peebo.
And Peebo is not very annoying. I mean, I don't know if it's supposed to be feminine or male or whatever.
I think it's kind of a kid.
Yeah, that's kind of what they do. Is like it's little kid voice in American context always sounds female for some reason. But
well, if you're listening to a little kid voice and not actually seeing the kid,
yeah, but it looked female to me. But regardless, it comes out, explains the situation, and what I love is that she just like shoots out the bio bracelets, and they attach themselves to him, and they can't get them off.
They get them off, yeah.
Yeah.
And to go off that female robots bit, we would get plenty more of that in Sentai's future.
Absolutely. I think Live Man was the next major example of that.
Yeah, and then if you ever want to see a good satirization of that, look at the episode of Akiba Ranger in Season 2. I forget the episode number, but Nobuo, a.k.a. Akiba Red, is revealed to have a fetish for robot girls. And so it touches on each of the female robos in Sentai.
Fascinating.
Yes. Great series.
So as the plot pretty much goes forward, Mason attacks them. And what I like here is kind of interesting is they try to take on the robot soldiers by themselves. By the way, the enemies are called the New Gear Empire. It's okay. But they have a cool-looking base at the North Pole. Or at least it looks like the North Pole. Could be South Pole. Anyway, so they try to fight them, and they fail. And then the only thing they can do is transform into the Bioman. And like you said, what was good, they were doing it one by one as opposed to a whole team.
Yeah, because something that happened in these past Sentai first episodes that everyone would henshin at once.
Yep.
But basically, the Peebo gives them the instructions. They don't inherently know.
Well, yeah, they transform, and what explains it, and I like this idea, is that their helmets are transmitting data into their brains on how to do all this stuff. How to fly the robots, how to activate the weapons and everything. And I appreciate that.
And so Red's the first to go, and then one by one the Rangers see each other do it, so they decide, okay, I'm going to try this.
Yeah, with the Pink Ranger being last, of course. And ironically, they go in their numeric order by their designation. Excuse me. And then they fight, and what's really good action sequence. Again, they've worked on the editing. You can tell what's going on. It's not like a Michael Bay or Christopher Nolan shaky cam kind of thing. And what was actually really cool that I liked visually was the Red Ranger's sword. It was the fire sword. It was actually on fire.
Yeah, and you mentioned the data, the helmet's transmitting data, which was used very nicely in the fight.
Yes.
Pink is being attacked by the robots, and she gets scared and crumples to the ground. But her helmet takes over for her. Yeah,
I'm not so sure exactly what the relationship is. I'm sure if we watch more episodes, because either A, it automatically made her do it, or B, she just like knew how to do it, so she was able to push off. I mean, that's a little...
I think it was her helmet making a tactical decision for her.
Okay. Although, I'd like to know how that fits into the rest of the series, and again, we haven't seen anything beyond just the first episode. But it's very reminiscent of what they're doing now in Tokyuger.
Yeah, with Pink having her Supergirl imagination bits.
But I think the idea is it means that the girl needs more help than the others. And it does seem to...
Well, one girl needs more help than the others.
True. Because I think by making the Yellow Ranger female tomboyish, it kind of eases that transition a little bit.
Yeah. And it creates the contrast between the two.
And then the episode, it goes as usual, giant robot fight in the first episode and whatnot. Now it ends, of course, with, as you said, Yellow walking away, refusing to join.
Be a Bioman, yeah.
Yeah, and then that's where the episode ends. But again, as an overall first episode, there were a lot of things I liked about it. Again, this is the difference that I will say between Sentai and at least recent Power Rangers, is that they are learning from their mistakes and they are changing. Because you compare this to Go Ranger, Battlefield for J, and Jacka and all that, they improved on a lot of things. It could just be our Western sensibility, but again, I do believe their editing and their pacing got a lot better with time.
Before we wind this down, let's talk about, you mentioned Power, let's talk about Power Rangers.
Yes, because I really wanted to mention this, so I wasn't going to get away until we pointed this out. So, as many of y'all know, Zero Ranger was not the first pitch attempt by Saban to do the Power Rangers franchise. He did try to pitch Jetman at one point, unsuccessfully, but long before that, he did pitch Bioman. There's actually evidence in an LA, is it Variety or LA Times or some sort of Los Angeles paper
where it mentions that he attempted with Bioman years before.
Yeah, and I believe the series was going to be called Bioman or something like that.
That translates.
And what's so interesting is like there's a thing on the collector's DVD set that I need to get my hands on that I can't seem to find right now. Of like footage of the Bioman with like American subtitles and like redone music. It was basically his demo reel for Bioman. And the Red Ranger was named Jason, and the Green Ranger was named Zach. So he had those names all the way back then. And so, but of course that show never got picked up. But what was interesting, actually, let me tell you about it. It wasn't Jason was the Red Ranger, some other name. I can't remember off the top of my head. But the point is, when you actually look at this episode and compare it to Day of the Dumpster, there are a couple of similarities between the two.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, because primarily you got the Rangers who deny the powers, try to fight the soldiers by themselves, realize they can't do it, and then they morph, and at the end of the episode, a female Ranger who's reluctant to join. Although in Kimberly's case, it was more of a joke.
Yeah.
So, I mean, did you see those when you were watching it?
I was definitely noticing that, which made me think, I wonder if Saban essentially created the same plot outline they had for the pilot of Power Rangers for Bioman, and then couldn't get Bioman, tried Jetman. Maybe if he would have done a Jetman pilot, it would have been the same plot.
And think about this: isn't Peebo basically an alpha?
Yeah, Peebo in many ways seems like a predecessor to Alpha, and perhaps in his original pitch, Saban had plans for a character like Peebo, and that just stuck around when he went to adapting Zoo Ranger.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me that when he originally saw this, that he lifted some of those elements. I wouldn't be surprised if his first episode, Bioman, was a revision of the Bioman script, almost a literal translation.
And it just stuck through the different versions.
Absolutely, and I mean, knowing that he originally tried a Bioman pitch and actually watching the first episode, I can see where that came from, even if you want to go the route of the tomboy, because look at all the adaptations he wanted to pitch. Bioman, Jetman, all had females. Zoo Ranger did not, and he definitely wanted a female in there. And of course, the whole tomboyish thing kind of works into it.
And perhaps that just stuck from him looking at those two previous versions.
Absolutely. I mean, I would venture to say that Bioman is the real genesis for Power Rangers.
Oh, of course. And it is unquestionably that, because it was what caught his interest in the Super Sentai franchise, because he was in Japan for some kind of business thing, I don't know.
Yeah,
he caught an episode of Bioman on TV.
Yeah, in his hotel room, dude. It's just like, what is this? Oh, kids in spandex fighting robots. This is awesome. It's Japan.
Yeah, and if that wouldn't have happened, if he wouldn't have turned on the TV at that time, we may have never gotten Power Rangers. I mean, chances are Super Sentai would have been experimented with adaptation at some point.
And of course, we would have gotten some sort of dub or sub. I mean, heck, we got Dynaman.
I mean, it may have been, someone may have had the same idea eventually, but Power Rangers, as we know it, owes itself to Bioman.
Yeah, I think directly, of course. Because, of course, it owes it to Sentai as a whole, but I think its origins for where it came in and how it peaked. Because do you really think Jacka could have piqued Saban's interest?
No, and I think what was special about Bioman compared to the Sentais that came before it was that Bioman had I mean, it wasn't the first science fiction themed one because they are all science fiction themed to an extent.
Yeah.
But this one was very technical with the stuff it was presenting.
Yeah, and of course, what we did not see in this episode was the robot turning into the 2 jet modes and all that.
Yeah, yes, because we had tactical computers, very technical looking suits.
And the weapons look very simple and effective. You got the gun, you got the sword, which I don't know if they were the same thing, and they never showed that. And of course, later we get the vehicles in the series and all that. So, as far as this looks like the biggest merchandising opportunity in Sentai up to this point, which is also a big draw for, again, Power Rangers and all that.
For a potential franchise, yes.
And let's also say Zero Ranger was bigger in the merchandising department than Jetman ever could have been.
At that point, it was because the merchandising angle had slowly been building over the years.
Absolutely, and it really hit its apex with Zoo Ranger when you compare them. But that's, again, off subject here. But like you said, I really liked the episode. I mean, do you have any just final thoughts you want to go ahead and say about Bioman?
Well, you know what? I think I'm going to go home and torrent it, put it on my tablet, and make it my new thing that I watch at the gym while I'm on the elliptical. Because, you know what, Kill La Kill is ending in 2 episodes. I'm going to be really depressed, so I need something to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I got to get through Kaku Ranger and Dai Ranger before I can start anything else.
You need to watch Jetman before you watch Kaku Ranger and Dai Ranger.
I have 6 full Sentai series on my hard drive, and I haven't watched any of them
Jetman
yet.
first.
All right.
You already started Jetman.
Yeah, 1 episode. Well, Raptor, I want to thank you for joining me again. I really liked getting back into the Sentai Origins, if only just to watch more Japanese television.
And to get a break from Super Mega Force.
Yeah, because we all need a break from Super Mega Force. But when we come back, whenever that will be, the next Sentai Origins will go ahead and cover Changeman, which I will say I've already seen the first episode, Raptor. A lot of interesting things in that, so look out for that when we end up watching that together.
Yeah, and as we get through, because we're getting past the halfway point on the pre-Zoo Sentais, it's going to be interesting once we start getting to the shows Power Rangers did adapt.
Yes, because those will spark lots of conversation, no doubt, especially from my side.
Exactly.
But Raptor, again, thank you for joining me. Thank you guys for listening here tonight. And again, if you want to go ahead and see Bioman, I will have a link in the comments section right there, so go ahead and check it out and let us know what you think. Otherwise, have a good evening, and the tavern is now closed.